Well, hello Facebook, anybody who's cared to listen. So the target of today's video, the infamous Tommy Robinson, now apparently organising a march for the 11th to take place, and this march should be against Islamic hate. Understandably, this man's got a huge following at the minute. Understandably, he's touching on issues that's close to many of our hearts, because we're all affected by these latest events. But it would seem that many people are forgetting that this guy represents the far right, and it was a member of the far right who killed MP Joe Cox. Let us not forget. Not someone shouting Allahu Akbar or someone from ISIS, which was created and funded by Western intelligence agencies. So I'm going to keep this short and sweet, and the way I see it is this: the Manchester attack. He was known to the intelligence services. He travelled to Libya. He used to hang an ISIS flag outside of his window. He used to chant verses and incite people, try and incite hatred. His dad was a paid mercenary to overthrow Gaddafi, and when they failed initially in the 90s, his dad sought refuge, political asylum. Our country granted it to him. Then when the revolution kicked off again in 2012 and the NATO bombing and the overthrow of Gaddafi, his dad went over, so did that guy. So fundamentally, we were attacked by someone who we trained and funded his dad to overthrow, someone who was a dictator, a regime that supported terror. But it would seem that the very person who we paid and trained to overthrow the dictator, Gaddafi, well, his son has come back to then blow us up, and his son was allowed to travel to Libya, you know, and go to Syria. So the intelligence agencies have failed. Once again, this individual was known to the intelligence agencies. Nothing was done about it. Children were killed. We were attacked. This latest one in London, known to the intelligence agencies. Salman Abedi as well, from the Manchester attack. He was even kicked out of his local mosque, reported by Muslims in his community to the intelligence agencies. Nothing happened. A bit like the London attack now. One of them was known to security services for trying to radicalise children. Nothing has happened. One of them was even on a documentary programme, The Jihadi Next Door, where he's walking around reciting hateful speech. You know, there's nothing Islamic about that, preaching the killing and slaughter of innocent individuals. There's nothing Islamic about that. They're not Muslims. They're hiding behind religion, you know, and people are falling for it. But my point is they were known to the intelligence services, the attackers of the London and Manchester. So the intelligence services have failed us. They were reported to the police by Muslims. So it's not that there's Islam hates us, it's that the establishment, for one reason or another, is allowing this to happen through their own failings. I myself and others would also argue that it's like the establishment's doing it on purpose. But you know, I guess that's a whole nother conversation. So why in the midst of these two attacks would Tommy Robinson be coercing everybody to come and basically gather in unity against Islamic hate? It's not so much Islamic hate, surely it's the failings of the establishment to protect us. People from within the Muslim community, the community that Tommy Robinson tries to vilify, they reported attackers from the London attack and the Manchester attack, but nothing was done. See, this man some of the stuff he talks about, it makes sense. I get why people want to listen to Muslims who've been convicted. He talks about crimes of people who are Muslim. What about all the white people? What about all the Christians? What about all the paedophiles in the regime within this country? He doesn't mention them. He doesn't mention any of them. He doesn't mention any of the failure of this government to basically investigate white people for child sexual crimes and sexual exploitation. But he'll happily sit there and tell us that, oh, Muslims have done this, Muslims have done that, because the guy's got a hidden agenda. There is evil people within every part of society, but we don't generalise that whole part. Many Muslims live in peace in this country. Many of them live with our way of life. They identify themselves as British Muslims. They don't all run around shouting death to white people, let's chop their heads off. That's not how it is, but this Tommy Robinson is portraying that image. He's playing on people's fears. It seems that people are forgetting the government's failings and just falling back to the fears. Well, it must be Muslims, it must be Muslim. There's Muslims reporting these extremists, these people, before they're committing acts of mass murder, and nothing's being done. The establishment is failing. The same establishment that starts wars in countries for no reason and overthrows dictators like Gaddafi, like Saddam Hussein. But then we're all left with the aftermath, with the instability, with all these angry people who are in their country, who've had their country blown up, with all these people who've now got access to weapons. There's no security in the country, there's no stability, so they can do what they want. We've got an intelligence agency in this country that's letting people travelling back to Libya and Syria without question. We've got an intelligence agency that are getting told to investigate people, and they're not, and these people are basically killing children in our country. So how can it be that people now want to go on a march against Muslims, against Islamic hate? It's not Islamic hate, it's the establishment. That's what it is, and that's at the very minimum. That's if you put aside, the Illuminati, Freemasons, Zionism. Let's just put this in basic terms. The establishment is failing us. The establishment is the problem. It's not Muslims. Many, many Muslims live amongst us in peace, in harmony, but our fears are being played upon. We're being deceived once again. It's easy why this guy does get the attention that he gets, but why is he not mentioning the white sex offenders, the white nonces, the people who run this establishment, the people who run this government, child exploitation? They specialise in that, who cover up paedophilia, who support the likes of Jimmy Savile. Why is he not mentioning that? Because this guy's got an agenda. This guy wants to divide us, and this time now we should be coming together against the government. We should be all standing hand in hand, white people, Christians, Jews, religious, non-religious, rich, poor. We should all be coming together and saying we deserve better. We deserve a better way of life. We deserve better security. More needs to be done. And before you take our liberties and our freedoms, why are these individuals allowed to preach hate on the internet? Why aren't these sites closed down? And why are we told these perpetual lies about they can't manage it? You can't even drop a piece of litter in town without getting identified and getting fined. Anyone who has a fight, you get caught through CCTV. Every time these terrorist attacks are happening, there's no CCTV, and people are forgetting that, because they seem too happy to go, well, it must be the Muzzies, bloody Muslims. Plenty of Muslims live here and don't do anything. Plenty of Muslims are treating victims of these bomb blasts. Plenty of Muslims are against ISIS. Plenty of Muslims have been killed by ISIS, but yet people still want to believe it's Muslims. Who's training ISIS? Who's giving them the weapons? Who's letting them travel all around the world? Now we've got ISIS, in almost every corner. They've swept across the globe more efficiently than any army. How could that possibly be? We need to start asking these questions, and fundamentally, without getting caught up into the opinions and the facts and the conspiracy, there's one basic principle amongst all this. It's the establishments that's failing us. It's the governments that are failing us. The same government that we pay money to with our taxes, the same government that we put into power to basically manage these affairs. They are failing systematically. They're destroying the infrastructure of this country. They're affecting all of us on many different levels. We're being left to live in fear. It's the government what's keeping this level of fear. It's not Muslims. And what this guy's going to do with this march is it's basically just going to be a majority of angry white people shouting racist slurs under the guise that Muslims are taking over. Anyone who stops us and goes against us, they're trying to stop our freedom of speech. If that guy had any decent bone in his body, what Tommy Robinson would be saying is, I deplore terrorists, I deplore people who want to kill other people in the name of any god for any reason whatsoever. But if you'll stand with me, I'll stand with you. So, despite my past and despite how I've been associated with the right, what I'm saying now is I accept people who live amongst us, other Muslims, people of other faiths, of other religions. And I'm not racist in any way. The people who want to live amongst us and the people who are against that, I'm with you. The people who I'm against are the people who want to commit the mass murders, and I'm also against the government because the government's failing us. This man's not saying that. This man's trying to generalise all Muslims. He's trying to cause hatred. He's trying to cause division. That's what's wrong with this country. There's loads of division. There's too many opinions floating around. There's too many little groups of this and little groups of that, and the number one thing is the government is failing us. The government is keeping us living in fear. The government facilitates these wars, not your everyday Joe in the middle of the street. We just have to deal with the aftermath of it all. We have to deal with basically people judging us on the actions of our government. Our government just basically declares, oh, we're going to go and invade there, you've got to go, and if you basically disagree with us, you're a terrorist sympathiser. It needs to stop. That's the type of thing we should be uniting against and rising up against. So what Tommy Robinson should be doing is encouraging everyone to come together with the mass following that he's got, and the public are looking to him for answers. I can't believe this guy has managed to get so much influence, and he's managed to come from so far from the right, and he's basically been used now to gather the thoughts and the minds of people in the middle who are starting to open up now, who are starting to ask questions, who are people who are sick to death of this happening because it shouldn't be happening. But it's the intelligence services that knew about these individuals. They were even allowed television programmes, the Jihadi Next Door. No CCTV whenever these attacks happen whatsoever. The Manchester attack, we've still not seen it. You get a chemical attack in Syria, which is being bombed to rubble, absolutely nothing, no infrastructure whatsoever, but yet, oh, there's a chemical attack and people are there with camera phones, the Wi-Fi, the internet's all working, we can catch the whole thing, but yet we get terror attacks in London with no clear CCTV of that event happening, which it should do. We get the Manchester attack, no clear CCTV of that happening. That's not a conspiracy, that's fact. That's fact. That's nothing to do with tinfoil hat. That's nothing to do with loving Muslims and hating Muslims. When are you going to realise that the whole Muslim card is used to divide us? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Our anger and our frustration should be focused towards the government. That's who's causing all this, that's who's failing us, that's who's arming these rebels, that's who's training these rebels, that's who's turning the cameras off, that is who is allowing people to basically come in and out from countries where we know there's instability, we know that there's ISIS there, we know that these individuals have even got links to radical sections of society, but they're allowed to... The failings are with the government. The hate and the fear is being spread by the government. They're the ones that allow these sites to come up. The government is the one that allows sites on Facebook of people basically encouraging child abuse, of people allowing it, of people glorifying it, of people talking in detail. And these groups get reported and nothing gets done about them. That's the world that we're living in. That's the government that allows that. The government is allowing these individuals space to basically spread this hate, to basically get into the minds of vulnerable individuals or people with mental health problems or people who are angry because their country's been blown up. They shouldn't be given this space. They shouldn't be giving programmes to Jihadi Next Door. They shouldn't be allowed these channels. There shouldn't be bomb-making manuals on the internet that are so freely available. It should be a lot more harder. And people who are looking at these manuals, they should be tracked down. They seem to be able to track all of us down to give us a fine, or to get council tax, or to basically anything that generates money off us. They have no problem finding us. They have no problem locating us. But yet we can't do anything about all these people who want to kill us, who've got YouTube channels, who are basically glorifying it. There's nothing that can be done about it whatsoever. It's always our freedoms and our liberties that are basically told that we need to be taken or we need to lose or consider giving up, before it's the freedom and the liberties of the people that are against us. Because obviously I'm pro-Muslim, I'm pro-life, but I'm totally against this ISIS, even though I know the government's created ISIS and they're funded and armed. I'm totally against them. I'm totally against this loss of life. I'm totally against people in my country being divided. My issue is with the extremists. My issue is the people that are trying to kill us. I don't excuse it. I don't allow it. And when I'm saying that it's no wonder people are being radicalised because our army's dropping bombs, I'm not saying what they have done is right. What I'm saying is I understand that through us in destroying these countries and creating so much instability, it creates an atmosphere. It creates a factor that's basically leading us to where we're at now. I'm acknowledging it. It's called common sense. Not just feeding into that instant ideology that it must be Muslims, it must be Muslims. Muslims are doing it because they hate us. We need to